Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk. This is my first time in London. I'm having a great time. Fish and chips here are wonderful. And if anyone has any recs for beef Wellington, please let me know if you got the hookup, because I would love to try it, and I'm really intrigued. So my name is Jasmine Greenaway. I am a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, and pretty much my job entails using writing, speaking, and coding to show you how to use Microsoft Azure in interesting ways for fun and profit, and also just to get you excited about the cloud in general. So part of my journey to Microsoft came from some teaching experience. I'm currently an adjunct professor, also an adjunct professor at LaGuardia Community College in New York City, where I teach beginning front and back end web development in spring to about the end of summer. It is split up into 2 sessions, and I teach about 20 to 25 young adults how to use the web and how in the building blocks. And we start from how the internet works all the way down to how to play around with JavaScript and jQuery. And we have a lot of fun. It's a really enriching experience, and I've learned a lot. And I use that learning experience and teaching experience that I use there in my daily life as a Microsoft employee and as a cloud developer advocate. So I honestly just thought I'd just give teaching a shot, and the opportunity came up, and I was feeling pretty confident, and I'd already done a few mentorships and volunteered at a few hackathons, and I thought I was ready. And one of the most intriguing things about the position is that I had the freedom of making the schedule and the syllabus. So as long as it fit within the learning outcomes and expectations, I could do whatever I want. I could get creative, but also practical with the way that the students could learn. And that's when that first twinge of imposter syndrome came in. What do I know about teaching? How do you know if you're expert enough to teach the basics of your profession? But I had signed the contract, and there was no getting out of it. And so instead of thinking about my qualifications as a teacher, I thought about my experience as a developer and a student. And I said, and first when I thought about myself as a developer, I said, what would I say to junior Jasmine today? And what would be the things that she would have wanted to know at the beginning of her career? So here is junior Jasmine. These slides are not working. Just make sure this is working. I have to press this here. So this is junior Jasmine. Just make sure this works. Okay. So this is junior Jasmine. This is me probably like my last year of college, and one of the first things I did when I graduated is I bought myself a car. I had a very old Toyota Camry. It was like, I think, late 80s, and it was, it was on its last leg. And I had a very fortunate experience where I was able to work part-time as an intern toward the end of my college career, and I actually got hired full-time as a full-time employee when I graduated. So when I could finally say I worked full-time, I went and got a car. And so during this time, you're starting to really be an adult. You're realizing that being an adult includes a lot of paperwork, and I'm also trying to figure out, how car financing works in general. And what I'm getting at is that I just had a lot of questions about a lot of things, including as a junior dev, as a new dev. And today, I would tell myself not to get anxious and nervous about asking all of these questions, because a while ago, a manager said to me once, if you're not asking questions, you're not doing your job. And I took that to heart, because in order to do, you have to understand and learn what you're doing. And having an environment where any questions were welcome, where there were no silly or bad questions, can bring you to deeper, granular questions and answers. And you can start with the hows, and the hows can evolve into the whys. And you compile the answers from your hows and your whys, and you can start experimenting and creating your what-ifs and creating your own answers. I also thought a lot of my job would be a lot of remembering code syntax and algorithms, and that it was more about what I know than how I apply it. But eventually, I became one of those people who have like multiple tabs open on their computer. I'll just leave it at that. I think we've all been there. We know how that goes. So then, I thought about my academic career. What would have been college Jasmine's ideal learning experience? So in this picture here, this is, I think, my second year of college. I was in this club called the Dance Dance Revolution Club. If you're not familiar with the game, it is you take a foam pad, and it has 4 arrows on it. It has like north, south, east, west, and you kind of step on it to to the music. And so you could find me playing DDR on a Friday night. And so I was in this club, and we had a parade at the campus, and the theme was secret agents. And so so we're dressed up as secret agents, and if you notice, you kind of can't see my tie because it's duct tape. We were all like engineers, so I didn't have a tie, so we were just like trying to figure out like, how do we do it? It's like, duct tape solves a lot of problems, including when you need a tie. So that was me, and so the beginning of the year started with the hunt for cheap textbooks. And have you ever seen a textbook? Do you know how like huge it is? Like, do they really expect you to read these 400 pages with the 3 months that you're going to be there? And especially when you have 400-page textbooks in 3 other classes. Like, seriously? So most of my classes didn't get through all the material. Some classes, I didn't even open the book. And some classes, I would maybe open the book or I'd use it as reference for difficult homework questions. So the way that would pretty much go is that I would have to go all the way back to index and search for the topic for the thing that I was doing homework for, and then while I'm flipping the pages back to that topic, praying and hoping that it has clues for me to finish my homework. And it got really overwhelming and really frustrating. So on the topic of homework, the main question that a lot of my classmates would ask each other is, did you get the homework? Did you understand? Do you know how to start? Can you help me? And sometimes you get that sinking feeling when you realize that they don't get it as much as you do. And so we'd attend class and we take notes, we'd be there and we compare notes and we try to figure it out. And sometimes we'd just be at a loss. And it always just seems strange that when we come to these classes to learn how to also learn, but also get the information to learn how to do the homework, you would assume that when you're working on subject matter that is related to the lesson, that it would make sense and it would it'd be second nature to work through it. Because homework at the end should feel familiar. It should be an evaluation of how well we understand what we just learned, and it should be an extension of the lesson. Finally, busy work does nobody good. We're attending class to learn. No one likes their time being wasted. And I'd rather much be playing DDR than doing busy work. And in today's society, time is money. And this is especially true if you're a student in the US where college is very pricey. So I started to feel a little better once I realized I had a lot to say and ideas that I wanted to try. And I wanted to have the experience my teaching experience just go along, my passion and my experience as a student and in my career go a long way. And that the teaching experience would come with time. Yet, I feared that my students would suffer from how long that time will pass until I got it, until I just felt like I was a great instructor. But as I started to teach, I realized that my excitement and my passion surpassed those fears, and that the students were too busy figuring out the building blocks of the web while I was figuring out how to be an effective instructor. So with that, I got started on Syllabus. So for anybody who might not be familiar with what Syllabus is, it's a document that that's usually passed out at the beginning of a course to outline teaching expectations or learning expectation, student responsibility, any general course information, and it lets the students know what they'll be working on and what the takeaways will be from the course at the end of the semester. So there were 3 things that I wanted students to take away from reading the syllabus. First, class was interactive. We would code together, and they'd be graded for participation in class from time to time. I would give them assignments to do in class based on what they learned, and it really wasn't about if they got it right. It was about the effort. It was about seeing them try. And the way I would do this is pretty much, it would usually be some buggy code, and I would say, fix it. Let's fix it together, and let's figure it out. And as long as someone was trying and giving it a shot, they would get a passing grade. Second, they needed to know that the only thing that they had to be afraid of about this class is not being honest with themselves about what they needed to succeed in the class. I wanted to know that learning anything new is difficult, but we had the internet, we had other classmates, and they had me to ask questions. And there were no tests, so I'm sure that was a little bit of a relief for them as well. And finally, I wanted them to get excited about what they were learning. So we would have about a 30-minute break in the class. So for some background, the classes were about 4 hours, 4 hours a week, which can be a lot. So we'd break in the middle. And around that time is when they would start losing energy. You've ever been at a conference when you eat and you start getting a little tired. So that's the same thing that was happening to my students. So what I would do is I would make that section right after break interesting. So what I would do is I would bring in a guest. So somebody who was in the industry, and they would know and they would be able to talk about what we were doing in the lesson plan and relate that to what they were doing in real life in their careers. Or we would take a look at some demos of some other programmers are doing. So we had some fun with WebGL, we had some fun with web audio, CSS3 animations, they really love that, and also comparing browser performance. So just things to get their wheels turning, get them excited about what else was to come. So on the topic of excitement, knowing your audience is key for any conference speaker. You generally want to know what information and content they'll be excited about. And you can infer a lot of the information based on the type and the setting of the conference, and maybe any past presentations. And in the classroom, students are your audience. And while it could be argued that it's not your job to keep them interested, it sure goes a long way. So the solution that I came up with was to strike up a conversation in the beginning of class. And so this would be 15 minutes while I was maybe taking attendance or maybe putting some documentation or my lesson plan together. And it's just a chance to get to know the students better. So it would pretty much go how was everybody's weekends? So these classes are on Saturday, so everyone's already feeling pretty cranky. So I would say, how was your weekend? What's your weekend plans? What are you looking forward to? We also were big fans of video games and anime as well. So we would talk about so there was this really popular anime, Attack on Titan, coming out, and we would talk about, did you see the last episode? What did you think? And we would just get conversation going, and get everybody and just have everybody know who each other was, and kind of just a little bit of an icebreaker for the day. But also, it was more than just building rapport and trust. I desired to build out demos and examples that they would be interested and could relate to. So I discovered a familiarity with their mannerisms and their body language. And so it got to the point where any of you have an acquaintance where you all might see each other at conferences every once in a while, or see each other at meetups every once in a while, and you don't know them very, very well, but if you are speaking to them and you're in a crowd, and maybe someone butts into conversation, says something strange, or maybe something just strange happens around you, and you kind of give each other a look like, did you see that? That was really weird. So that's kind of where the students and I ended up in terms of being able to read their body language and seeing where it was a really good indicator to see where they were in the lesson plan, to see if they understood. So, maybe someone like a furrowed brow would mean that they don't understand what I just said. Or maybe they would just be losing interest. So I knew maybe it's time to take a 10-minute break. And so I used those cues to know when to slow down or when to stop. Or sometimes we would just alter the lesson for the day and kind of just break things down even deeper so that we all could get on the same track. So this is the example of the first homework assignment. And so background, I would also do the homework assignment so that they had a baseline of what it should look like. And, and I would obfuscate the code so that they couldn't just copy. So this first example is, I think this was the second week. And all they had to do was make pretty much a page just of a generic recipe, or one of their favorite recipes. And so I would give them some example recipe sites to look at. And then I told them, I'm going to evaluate you on a few things. I told them, I want to know if you know how to use a header. Do you know how to put an image on a page? And do you know the difference between an unordered list and an ordered list? And notice that we haven't even touched CSS, HTML, or CSS or JavaScript. This is very basic HTML. We would just start from HTML and build with CSS to make it look nicer, and then use JavaScript to make it look interactive. So it's never easy to listen to somebody lecture you for hours, especially 4 hours. It's not fun for a lecturer either. We've all been there, whether we've been tired or just not interested. We'll mentally dip in and out of meetings, talks, lectures, and dialogues. And so the students would get antsy and fidgety about every 30 minutes or so. And so keeping them interested was always a challenge. But it's hard to punish students for losing interest, because in the end, they're only punishing themselves when their grades suffer. In this case, I found doing live code examples held them accountable and interested. And the general format would be introducing a new concept, exploring how it works, and then we'd use just off-the-cuff examples. And usually it would be based on something that we're all a fan of, or we all are into. So, for example, in the last slide I showed you, we worked with food because we all had a common love for food. So this was a special moment when the lesson would pretty much turn into a discussion. And the question that would often be asked was, what if you do this other thing? What if you do to X, Y, or Z? And my answer would always be, I don't know, let's find out. So we all love a good cliffhanger. And so building on the suspense would get our wheels turning. So basically, even if I knew the answer, I would just say, I don't know. So we could just explore together. And with that, we would experiment by hypothesizing possibilities and trying it out. And it was really great because, sometimes the class would be split on what the expected behavior would be. Sometimes the discussion would get a little intense. They'd be like, you don't know what you're talking about. No, I know what I'm talking about. It got really intense at times, but it was a really great way to get the wheels turning and let them drive for a bit. And then also process the new materials in a way that, in their own way. So just giving them the space to do that. So let's take a look at how I would actually do this. So this is going to be a very, very basic example. I'm going to speak as if I'm speaking to a class. You don't have to answer. It's just, so it's kind of look a little bit like I'm talking to myself. And so what we're going to learn today is how to add headings to a page. So let me see if I can swap this here. All right, so here we go. Just to let it stay like this. So usually when we get started on a new lesson plan, I'll usually give them like a blank HTML page with all with all just the basic the basic elements so that they can just get started. And sometimes I would give them HTML files with some extra stuff in there so that they kind of like can delete stuff and add stuff and kind of figure out and play around with stuff and kind of see how everything works. Kind of like how we do when we see some code, or when we're our first day on the job and we're looking at code and we're kind of poking at things and trying to see how everything works and how everything works together. So this is very similar to what I would start off with, and so I'm gonna just get into character here and we're gonna simulate a session. So today, we're learning about headers. And if you've ever used a word processor like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, the first thing you'll usually work on is the title. And the title usually is the biggest part of...
Could you make it bigger if you can't see?
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
Control plus or something.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Didn't mean to mess up your flow.
No worries. So the title of the page is usually the biggest sentence or biggest phrase on the page to let you know that this is what this page or this content is about. But did you know that you can also do that in HTML? So let's take a look how you do it. We'll do that with the header tag. And the header tag is really short. It's just H1. So I'll type it in here, and there we go. And now let's just put this is a heading. And I'm going to add some text below this so that you can see the difference between the two. So let's see what this looks like on a website. So I'm going to bring this over here. All right, so when we refresh this, we can see that the heading is the title of the page, and then the other text is pretty much just the rest of the page, the regular text of the page. Now, this is not supposed to be confused with the title that is in the head element, because that's the thing that you see in the tab in the browser. So and remember last week we talked about how that area of element you don't see that, the user doesn't see that on the page. So don't confuse the two. So a heading and a title are two different things when it comes to HTML. Okay. So now every once in a while when you work on an essay, you have maybe a subsection that you want to separate, right? So we'll usually add like a subtitle, right? And so HTML actually has something very similar. We can call it a subheading. And it's really easy to add. All you have to do is add H2. Okay, this is a subheading. And we can see what that looks like. Great, and we can see the difference between the three lines of text. What if you have another one? Let's add a third one. I'll just leave that typo there. Don't feel like going back. So now we see that there's a difference between all three, and including the fourth line of text. But what if we wanted to go up to 100? Do you think we can go up to 100? Yeah? Let's find out, because I don't know. Let's figure it out. So I'm going to cheat here a little bit, and I'm just going to copy some code. So let's first experiment all the way at 8. I'm just going to paste this in here. So I think we can go up to 100. Someone else can believe, and someone else in the class believe that we can go to 100. Anybody think anything different? No? Well, let's figure it out. So I'm going to save this, I'm going to refresh. Oh, and look what happened. So we see heading 4, 5, 6, but 7 and 8 look just like the regular text that we had at the bottom there. So it looks like that it only goes up to 6. And so that's pretty much how I would teach and just build from something very small to very deep examples. And so it was really fun to see the students kind of ask questions and get into it and get interested. So, and at the end, I really didn't have any issues trying to keep them engaged because A, part of the grade was staying engaged, but B, also they actually were following along with me. So I would be live coding like I was before, and they would be following along, and they'd be comparing, and then we would pause. And it was, and just like I was mentioning how like I was able to read their body language, we would pause and be like, does everybody understand? And someone would raise his hand and say no, and then we'd take a second, and I'd go around class, and maybe students would help each other and try to figure out what was broken. And yeah, it was a good time to like get to understand how the students code and how they use the tools, because that was another thing that we had to learn was like how to learn how to use a text editor and learn a few like shortcuts, copy and paste and things like that. And and it was like a really just good time to just immerse yourself and let themselves drive. So at the end of class, all the code examples were they're uploaded to an internal platform, and that for all the students could access. And it was important that the students felt like they could get back on track if they'd fallen behind. Every once in a while you'll miss a class, and sometimes it's hard to play catch up. And it's no secret, at least in the U.S., that college is expensive. Failing a class is potentially a sunk cost. And I believe that we all deserve a second chance sometimes. And students who miss class could review the notes and attempt to get back on track. And I would also be a resource for them to ask for help if they needed help catching up. And I would not also help them with the code. I would help them understand where they stand in the class. Like if they need to know whether or not they need to drop or not, I would just be honest with them because no one wants to waste their time. And so on the topic of examples, it was important to keep them relevant to the assignments. And I just think back on my experience I was mentioning in college and how the countless times I would just be tearing my hair out over the homework. And just with my brand new notes, I get so frustrated because I just felt lost. And even just usually the first question is the easiest, and sometimes that was even tough. And so example notes were modeled after the homework. I would actually make the homework assignment first, and then I'd build out the lecture after. And it was just not, and these examples were not just like a simple copy and paste solution, but they were just buildable examples that could be morphed into homework. So the approach here was that everything produced in class would be valuable references and that nothing would go to waste. So it's very similar, like if you've ever worked on a project or maybe pushed some code to a repo, and you're working on something else, and you're like, man, that line of code in that last project was awesome. I'm going to copy that and put it in my new project. And you'll get GitHub. Maybe you deleted the repo locally, pull it down, or maybe you just go to the raw file and copy and paste it in. So that was the same environment I wanted the students to kind of embrace. So it was always puzzling to see assignments that attempted to challenge or trick students outside of their newfound comfort zone in a subject they were just learning. A full-time student takes about roughly 12 credits. And based on the rule that you should have 2 to 3 hours of study time outside of class, that's about 24 to 36 hours of time that you should be spending on the subject. But add work, family, extracurricular activities like church, DDR club, all that other stuff. What time do you have to yourself? Every day, these students make a choice. They decide to come to class. They decide to do their homework. And degree-seeking students have a little bit less of a limited choice in terms of the courses they want to take. Because you have, an outline of courses you take to fill some degree requirement, right? And so you end up in classes that you wouldn't normally sign up for, but you're doing it to fill these requirements. And I had to be honest that some of these students were going to be in my class. And so I didn't want to force them to exceed the learning expectations that I laid out. And what I'm pretty much getting at is, why couldn't a challenge be a choice for them? Because if you think about it, meeting all expectations is an A, because the student just demonstrated what they have learned per the expectations lined out in the syllabus. We don't make an A syllabus, we don't make a B syllabus, we don't make a C syllabus. So why can't these challenges just be a choice, and just give them the roadmap they need to succeed, and leave it at that? So in my class, achieving past an A was a choice students could make, and it was an extension of the homework. So I would tell them, okay, get started on homework, and here's your extra credit option, and it would be just enhancing the homework assignment. So maybe that first example, I forget what I did in that first homework assignment. I think it was probably adding a link. I was like, figure out, do a search, do an internet search, and figure out, see if you can add a link on here, and add a link to a recipe that's very similar to yours. And so it would have very, very limited hints, and it would but it would just get the wheels turning so they could try and build on what they already know. And of course, like I said, they were instructed to prioritize the main assignment first. And this came in really handy because, like a lot of students, we like to procrastinate, and we'll submit homework late and things like that. So I would tell them, in my syllabus, I would say, if you're going to submit late, do the extra credit too. And if you're going to submit very late, try to submit an A assignment and do the extra credit, because when they would submit late, they would get points off throughout, for every week that they submit late. And if you can't do either, submit something. A 59% is better than a 0. If you want to do some creative, finish the main assignment requirements first. Because so this was also just a example of just working on time management, because as a student, time management is a thing that we're all still learning as a young adult. So the next slide here is pretty much I'm going to actually go through just some other things that I learned here in the syllabus that I think were really great. So in my syllabus here, I had a too long didn't read version, or TLDR. And so it lists out just things that they need to just take away. Be on time. We work on assignments in class. Submit your assignments on time for the best grade possible. Ask questions after you've done an internet search. Yes, there are extra credit opportunities. Raise your hand for help. Save your work. And then I gave them also tools, and I called this section Class Pace, Performance, and Tips. Because I just wanted them to get into, I didn't want to scare them. I wanted to let them know that this is hard, and this is going to be a challenging time for them, but that it was going to be okay, and that all they had to do was just listen, come and code with me, and be engaged, and come with a good attitude. So I'm just going to read this section. So this class is cumulative. Every lesson is built on previous lessons. You'll have a hard time catching back up if you fall behind. It's not impossible, but difficult. You should be writing code at least twice a week, once in class and once outside of class. And this will help you retain the information that you've just learned. Here's some handy tips. Write code more than twice a week. Copy examples, but don't submit it as yours. This is cheating. Use Slack for questions and getting to know your class. So we had a Slack channel or a Slack team that we'd all talk, and students could ask questions through that as well. Pair a program with a classmate. We also learned how to pair program in class, so that students actually started to make friendships that way, and had their favorite kind of person to sit next to in the classroom, which was really cool to see. If you're not going to be in class, make preparations prior so you can catch up on what you missed. Don't freak out, shut down, or disappear if you're feeling lost. Ask for help. Assess yourself every week. Did you understand the lesson that week? Be honest and figure out what you can do to get clarification on the things you don't understand. If you've fallen behind, if you feel that you've fallen too hard, fall behind, please contact me so we can assess the situation, find a resolution. So yeah, those were a few things that I wanted to just convey to the class. And I look back and the syllabus was 3 pages long, and this is all still iterative process for me. It's just I've only been doing this for 1 year, and I've learned a lot just from teaching. I've been learning how others learn, and it's been a really fun time. But anyway, in the grueling weeks, I saw my students learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, starting from not knowing basic copy and paste shortcuts to being able to use Git. And they were feeling pretty comfortable. And in the beginning, they had mentioned fears. They had gotten worried. They're is this a lot of math? Is this gonna be hard? What do I have to remember? Is there gonna be quizzes? Is there gonna be tests? I'm if you read the syllabus, you would know there were no tests. But what can you do? And during the class, they got excited. They expressed excitement. We had really good, deep debates and conversations. And at the end, they were proficient. And I knew that because at that point, I really got to know them well. I saw them get frustrated. I saw them fall behind. I saw them stress out. And I saw them connecting with the lesson. And I saw them also catch up. So before closing out, if you're interested in teaching and you don't have the opportunity in academia, there are other things you can do, such as hackathons, tutoring, mentorships, volunteering your time at organizations such as Code.org, Girls Who Code, Black Girls Code. You don't have to be in the specific demographic to do these things. Also know that you can donate money. They're all great organizations. And like I said, you can also mentor. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like this, here's a few tips for you. Build trust between you and your students. You can do this by listening to them and showing them that you're listening. So for me, I did this by putting a dash of our personalities into assignments in our in-class lessons. Second, be yourself. They're as nervous as you. They're meeting someone they barely know and working on something that they have probably never seen before. And with the setting and being professional in mind, just be authentic. And also, this also be an extension of just gaining and garnering trust. And finally, adapt to your students. Because in the end, you're both learning. Like I mentioned, you're learning how others learn, and they're learning how to code, which can look overwhelming at first. It's an overwhelming experience learning how others learn, and for others, learning something completely new. And it's just two different experiences going on. And when I learned this, when I realized this, I started not making detailed course schedules, because I started to realize that having a structured pace could kind of inhibit their learning. Trust, practicality, and flexibility got my students to where they are now. And that's why I believe only 2 students would fail my classes on average. And I also believe that's why I would get thank you notes in final projects and final homework and and I would get LinkedIn invites and emails just saying thank you. And it just felt really good because it felt like I was doing something right. And I hope that something was teaching with empathy. Thank you. Open the floor up for any Q&A.
Quick question, maybe you can mention that. Sure. Thank you for the talk.
Oh, welcome.
A quick question, maybe you mentioned it, but I forgot it. What was the students' age range?
They were about from like 17 to about 20. We did have some older like, returning students, so some that had like small families or had full-time jobs and had other responsibilities. So about like 20 to 25 was like the average.
Okay. I had a follow-up.
Or sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 18 to 25. I'm sorry.
18 to 25, okay. I was curious, well, that definitely happens more often with kids, but maybe it's the same with students of 18 to 25. Did you ever have a problem where people would want instant gratification and they would be confused and frustrated because a heading that we're showing them, this is not something they see on the web. They just want the fancy stuff and for it to look pretty and colorful, and it can be frustrating even if you use CSS.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so what I would do, oftentimes they would copy a bunch of code that they'd see in examples, and they throw it in their homework or whatever they were working on, and they would get frustrated because they're like, this is what I want mine to look like in this example, and we would sometimes, and for me, I would just be open about it, and I would be like, okay, let's sit down and see what's going on. So we put like a linter in the text editor, and we sit down and we kind of pick it apart and say, okay, this looks like you might have copied this halfway. Let's try and finish this statement. And we just kind of take our time and like try and figure it out. And one of the things, and I would just think, and I would think just about like my experience, in development. How when something wouldn't work, we would comment out like a block of code and just like uncomment one by one and try and figure it out together. So for them, they would get frustrated, but we would just take it step by step. Just like when you have to fix a bug, you just comment stuff out until you figure it out.
I have a question. Hi, Jasmine. Thanks for the talk. So, as a person who teaches people how to code on a semi-regular basis, I've always been told that teaching the web is one of the hardest things to do because of all the missing moving pieces from HTML to CSS to JavaScript. What kind of tips would you advise us to have when having all those different pieces together?
Together in like one like lesson?
Yeah.
Oh, I would say start from the basics. Start from the structure. I think I would give them a analogy. I would say kind of like a house. You have the foundation. The foundation's your HTML, and your lights. I think I said your lights would be JavaScript. Like your electricity would be JavaScript, and I think CSS was the interior, like the like trimmings, like the color of the house and things like that. So it was always important to just like start from the beginning, start from basics, and even when you're going down to like one technology. So for example, when it came to JavaScript, a lot of them got very nervous because like this looks terrifying, looks really intimidating. So what I would we would start by we started with like just vanilla JavaScript, and I was like, did you guys know that there is a way that you can do this much quicker? So and then we got into jQuery, and they're like, what? Why did we do all that? I was like, because I wanted you all to know, I wanted you all to start from something very simple and then work your way up.
And did you ever teach a framework in the class at all?
Just jQuery. At that point when they got to JavaScript, that's when like things started getting a little bit more hectic, and so that was the time when we had to like kind of slow down the pace a little bit. And so, but in the future, I would probably try something other. I would also do jQuery, but also something other, maybe like Angular or something like that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just one question from me, really. just as you've taught a number of classes now, what sort of split are you seeing with gender? Are you just seeing, are they all men? Do you see female programmers, or what sort of percentage are you seeing now?
It's definitely, I would say, if I had to say a percentage, I would say maybe 30% women, which is I think is like a great. It was a lot more than I was expecting. So I was really excited about that. And specifically, this college that I teach at is, I believe the demographics are about 70% people of color. So it was a lot of like people of color in my classes, and it was really great because like I just like saw myself, because like I mentioned earlier that they were like students that that were like big anime and like video game fans, and like that was me playing DDR, and so it was really great to like kind of like connect that way too.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I've gotten in trouble in the past when teaching the web because of my generation or my age, teaching historical context. And I think that that's important, but the young people that I teach to insist that it's not important. And you're nodding, which is not helpful. So thank you for that. What do you think?
I think that it's good in like small doses. Like it's like that, we're, I guess the younger age is like that listicle age. You got to give them like a few bullet points and you keep it moving. And I think, and you just kind of pick out those really interesting things and keep moving and let them, kind of give them the tools that they need to like delve into the history if they want to on their own time. You let them fall into their own little Wikipedia hole if they want to do that. Any other questions? Thank you so much for your time.